Major Garrett is at the White House. Major, as you mentioned, some of President Trump's staunchest supporters broke away from him on this issue. How much concern is there among Republicans ahead of midterms?
Well, significant concern, Elaine, and it's showing up in the polls. There's a poll today for another network that showed that the generic ballot comparison, Republicans and Democrats for the midterm elections coming up in November, had narrowed again, and the Democrats had sort of taken an advantage that they had lost over the last couple of months as the country's conversation tended to focus on the improving economic situation in this country. There's also our poll that came out earlier this week that showed Republicans divided on the question of whether it was acceptable or unacceptable to separate families at the border. Democrats and independents decidedly in the category of unacceptable, and Democrats and independents in general giving the president very low approval for his approach to immigration overall. You take that polling data and the fissures within the president's own political base on this question of family separation, and you have a real and proximate political problem for this White House. And that's why, after days of saying it could do nothing or trying to blame shift to Democrats, the administration at least took an initial step in the direction of keeping families together. Whether that creates bipartisan space on Capitol Hill for a resolution, highly questionable, because as Democrats have already begun to react, this may not be something, the executive order, that can withstand legal challenge, and their attitude is extended permanent deportation, rather detention and then deportation for families is not the solution and not one that they can support politically. So this may be a temporary political fix that doesn't resolve the underlying issues and may not take the political heat off this White House.
Major, I wonder, based on the conversations that you've had, have you been able to get a sense of whether or not the White House foresaw the force of the opposition to the separation policy? Was that something that was expected at any level?
Well, the administration takes all of its cues from the president in ways that I've never really seen before. And it is clear that once this policy, this zero tolerance policy, set in motion through information sent from the Justice Department in April, then announced in a public press release in May, put all of this front and center. And the administration more or less believed everything would reinforce the president's aggressive, hardline stance on immigration, and there would be no blowback and no consequences. Then materialized the heart-wrenching images and sounds of adults being separated from their children, in some cases those who accompanied them, in many cases their family members. The administration thought it could withstand that political pressure, but amid that political pressure, this administration had a very difficult time explaining in public whether or not this was a deterrent, whether or not this was something they were forced to do, whether it was their own policy, who was to blame. The administration could never, at HHS, meaning Health and Human Services, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, even here, come up with a consistent and coherent message about why it was choosing to do this, what the consequences of its own policy would be, and whether or not they could define it in terms they were comfortable with. Forget about the public at large. This administration had a hard time explaining what was really going on and why. That created enormous gaps that made Republicans on Capitol Hill increasingly anxious, because if you look at this issue in terms of the midterm elections, Elaine, there's no question that Trump supporters are going to turn out. Who is or what is the swing and variable constituency for a lot of these House and Senate races? It's suburban Republicans, disproportionately women. Many of those suburban Republican voters went along with the tide in 2016 and supported Donald Trump, the candidate. If they peel back, if an issue like this disengages them from either supporting Republican candidates generically or being part of a sort of a keep President Trump's momentum going with the Republican Congress, that could be a real problem. And that's what Republicans are anxious about. Could this issue, just when they were beginning to get a lot of solid footing beneath them on the economy, take away that solid footing, re-energize Democrats, and depress support among suburban Republicans, many of them women? That is the issue this White House is confronting in an ad hoc and sort of very rapidly shifting way with this executive order, which it can't fully explain, and it can't fully explain how it intends to implement.
And Major, just one more for you. Taking a wider view here, beyond just the midterms, when you talk about more broadly, Stephen Miller, who is the president's domestic policy advisor, Jeff Sessions, they have expressed a desire to change the way in which this country deals with not just illegal immigration, but
Sure.
also legal immigration. Can you just put a fine point on that, that ultimately the driving force behind a lot of what we are seeing has its roots in Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller's stated desire to reshape immigration policy at large?
Absolutely. It was their desire when Jeff Sessions was in the Senate and when Stephen Miller was his top domestic policy advisor, and it's been true when Jeff Sessions became the Attorney General and Stephen Miller moved into this White House as the president's top domestic advisor. Not only to draw a very hard line on illegal immigration, and this is a completely hard line. Zero tolerance means universal application of prosecutorial discretion. Everyone stopped at the border, prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. On the legal immigration side, they have persuaded the president to embrace changing the visa lottery system, making it much more restrictive, or creating a whole different standard by which you are deemed eligible for legal entry into this country through the lottery system. They also want to end what they call chain migration, which immigration advocates call family reunification, fundamentally changing, again, the legal means by which you enter the country and your family members enter the country. So it's not just a hard line on illegal immigration, it's redefining how you enter the country legally. What the president now wants, because of the advice of Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller, is what he calls a merit-based approach to legal immigration only. It's taking away the lottery system or diminishing it dramatically and reducing dramatically family reunification for someone who has entered the country legally. Those are huge changes, and they're one of the reasons why there's been no ability of this administration to create bipartisan support for larger immigration issues, because a great number of Democrats and a good number of Republicans are uncomfortable with those changes. And we haven't even gotten to the idea of border wall funding, which has been problematic for this White House as well. You put all of those together, bipartisanship is almost impossible to find. And what this administration is going to have to decide, Elaine, in the next 20 days, will the president sign a very narrow legislative fix that deals with this family separation issue and that only? If it agrees to do that, it will be essentially waving the white flag on a policy it set in motion and a political crisis it generated, and thereby solving that one issue, but knowing, in all likelihood, if you sign that legislation and you're Donald Trump, the President of the United States, you're not going to get follow-on comprehensive immigration legislation on any of your other priorities. And that will have to be explained. It'll be a tough explainer to the president's hardline immigration base.
Major Garrett at the White House. Major, thanks as always for your reporting and your analysis. Appreciate it.